In this video, we're going to get to the bottom of it. Which one should you play first, Professor's Research or Pokeball during your turn? This is one of the most common questions I see people asking YouTubers and streamers about Pokemon Pocket. When you have both of these cards in your hand, which one should you play first to get the desired outcome? Now, the answer to this is actually pretty complicated, so I'm going to break this video into two sections. At the beginning, I'll basically answer the question really simply and with really basic logic. And then in the second half, I'm going to go into the math behind it and show you why it makes sense to do it one way or the other. In case you're not familiar, let's talk about what each of these cards do. Pokeball takes one random basic Pokemon out of your deck and puts it into your hand, and then it shuffles your deck. Professor's Research just draws the top two cards off of your deck and puts those into your hand. Now, when it comes to playing these in the correct order, I think most people assume that you should be playing Pokeball first and then using your Professor's Research. This makes a lot of sense because by taking that basic Pokemon out of your deck will become one card smaller, and therefore your Professor's Research will be drawing from a smaller pool of cards, increasing the likelihood very slightly that you'll get what you want. However, there is a really important case where you would want to do it in the reverse order, playing Professor's Research before Pokeball. So let me explain. If your goal during your turn is to get a specific basic Pokemon out of your deck, and you know that there are multiple basic Pokemon in your deck, so Pokeball isn't guaranteed to get the one that you want, then it makes sense to play Professor's Research before your Pokeball. And the basic logic behind this is that by using Professor's Research first, those two top deck card draws may yield one of the other basic Pokemon that you're not looking for, thereby greatly increasing the probability of your Pokeball then drawing the basic Pokemon that you want. So the simple answer to this question is if you have both Pokeball and Professor's Research, and your goal is to pull a specific basic Pokemon, maybe you need that Pikachu EX or that Mewtwo EX, and you're not guaranteed that a Pokeball will pull it, use your Professor's Research first, then Pokeball. On the flip side, if you're not looking for a basic Pokemon and you need that evolved form of a Pokemon, maybe you need that Blastoise EX or something like that, then you should use your Pokeball first, then Professor's Research. Okay, so some of you may have a hard time believing that, and I certainly did. I was pretty confident that Pokeball always made sense to go first. So now let's take a bit of a deep dive into the probability and the math behind this logic. Now, before I jump into this, I have my best friend Tyler to thank for this. We got on the phone and spent an hour and a half, 2 hours doing the math. It was awesome, really fun to see how this works, but he is the one that actually understands probability, and he really helped walk me through this to help me understand. So thanks to him. All right, so to explain this, I'm going to use a very hypothetical situation where we have 6 cards left in our deck. 4 of them we know are basic Pokemon, 2 of them being Ralts, 2 of them being Meowth, and 2 of them are Sabrina, non-basic Pokemon. And our goal during our next turn is to get that Ralts out of the deck. We have a Professor's Research and we have a Pokeball. Which one do we play first? We're going to go through both ways and talk about the probability of getting Ralts along the way. So the way we'll calculate this may seem a little counterintuitive because a lot of times in probability, it's actually easier to find the probability of the opposite of your desired outcome and then take the complement of that one minus that probability to find the probability of your desired outcome. A really simple example of this would be if you have a bag of 4 cubes, 3 of them are red and 1 of them is blue, you know the likelihood of randomly pulling that blue one out is 25%, 1 in 4. But it's also true that the chances of you not pulling the blue one are 3 in 4. And if you take the complement value of that 1 minus 3 in 4, you still end up with that 25% probability of getting the blue cube. So that's what we're going to use here to calculate out the likelihood of getting Ralts. We're actually first going to look at the probability of not getting Ralts at each event along the way, Pokeball, and then the 2 Professor's Research draws. And then we'll do 1 minus whatever that figure is to get the probability of getting Ralts. So let's start with using our Pokeball first. Since this only acts on the basic Pokemon in the deck, we have a 2 in 4 chance of not getting Ralts, 2 Meowths and 2 Ralts. So we know 2 in 4 chance, 1/2 chance of not getting Ralts. The next event will be the first draw of our Professor's Research off of the now 5-card deck. So what is the probability now of not drawing Ralts? It is 3 in 5. And then the final event is our second Professor's Research draw, which is drawing 1 card from a 4-card deck. What is the likelihood now that we will not draw the Ralts? It is a 2 in 4 shot, or 1/2. Now we multiply all of these together. 1/2 times 3/5 times 1/2, and we end up with 0.15. Now to flip this and get the probability of getting Ralts, we take 1 minus 0.15, and we end up with an 85% chance of getting Ralts by using Pokeball first. So in this hypothetical situation, if you were to use Pokeball and then Professor's Research, you have an 85% likelihood of getting your Ralts. Now, believe it or not, that's actually the simpler one here. Now let's move on to using Professor's Research before Pokeball. Now, the reason this order is a little more complicated is you may actually pull one of those Meowths out of your deck when you're Professor's Researching, which greatly affects your probability of pulling Ralts with the Pokeball after. But to spare you some of the math, we're just going to assume that you pull one Meowth with that Professor's Research because it's pretty likely to happen, and the math in the end shakes out to be almost exactly the same. So we'll just be ignoring the scenario where your Professor's Research pulls 0 Meowths or 2 Meowths, and assume that one of the Professor's Research draws will be a Meowth, the other will be something else. So now let's use the exact same equation. Our first event here will be the first Professor's Research draw, which will be 1 card out of 6. What's the likelihood of not pulling a Ralts? 4 out of 6 cards are not Ralts, so you have a 2 in 3 chance of not getting Ralts at this event. The next event is the second Professor's Research draw, which will be 1 card out of 5. The chance of not getting Ralts here is 3 out of 5. And then finally, assuming one of those Professor's Research draws was a Meowth, what are the chances of not getting Ralts with your Pokeball in the end? It ends up being a 1 in 3 chance. You have 2 Ralts and 1 Meowth left. So the probability of not getting Ralts there, 1 in 3. Multiply these 3 together and we get about 13% chance of not getting a Ralts, and 1 minus 0.13 is about an 87% chance of getting the Ralts by playing Professor's Research first. Now, if you're still following here and you're skeptical about the whole 0 Meowth, 1 Meowth, 2 Meowth possibility during that first Professor's Research, here's what the math looks like. I'm not going to walk through it, but basically we calculate the odds of each situation. Then we figure out the likelihood of getting 0 Meowths, 1 Meowth, and 2 Meowth. And finally, we weight all of those probability figures together to still end up at 87%. Now, I know what you're thinking, stop talking about math, but it's also a lot closer than you might have thought. 87% chance of getting the Ralts using Professors first, and an 85% chance of using Pokeball first. And that's largely due to the fact that we have this hypothetical with a 6-card deck. It's a very small deck. The likelihood of getting Ralts is really high either way, and so they seem really close together. If your deck's larger, the percent change will be slightly different, but again, it will still work out in your favor to get a specific basic Pokemon when you play Professor's Research first. So just a quick recap here. If you have both Pokeball and Professors in your hand, and your goal is to get a specific basic Pokemon out of your deck, and you know there are multiple types of basic Pokemon in there, it always makes sense to use Professor's Research before using Pokeball. But if your goal is to get something else out of your deck, an evolved Pokemon or a trainer card, then always use Pokeball first, followed by Professor's Research. Let me know if you like this video by liking it down below, but also leave a comment if you want me to do another video like this. I thought I could talk about the probability of Misty flips or Celebi flips. There's some really interesting math that works out there, and I'd love to do a video if you'd be interested. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.